Have you ever thought you should be part of a think tank? Maybe the term think tank seems a little too specialized, reserved only for the most intellectually gifted people, that only the most revolutionary thinking has to come from the smartest, while the rest of us are just doomed to hope just to understand such wisdom. Well, this is what I want to talk about. This does not need to be some special club that you can't participate in. I want you to think about joining or forming your own think tank. Maybe for work, maybe for family, maybe for some interest you may have. Regardless, let's address how you can form your own think tank. But first, let's try to define it. This is challenging because there is no agreed upon definition. Webster defines it as an institute, corporation, or group organized to study such particular subjects, such as policy issues or a scientific problem, and provide information, ideas, and advice. Fundamentally, that could apply to just about any organization that has any capacity to plan and organize. And yet the term holds enough prestige that for most situations, nobody would consider them a think tank. Results are probably the best way to define one. After they've done the work and put forth and implemented a plan to change the nature of their interest, is it easier to see and define a think tank from the rest. But this takes time looking backwards, and to see such an impact, there might be an element of scale. So does scale have to contribute to this definition? Perhaps. On a global scale, probably. But what about the small teams that significantly impact and achieve their smaller goals on smaller projects that the world largely is unaware of? Should scale really then be that important? So more important is not what it's defined as, but rather if you should consider being part or building your own smaller think tank to solve your problems. I think so, and I hope to develop and systemize and teach you how to do this for yourself or for your organization. Maybe you think you're not smart enough. That's okay. Don't let the traditional sense of a think tank fool you into thinking you need to have high IQ in order to effectively sustain a think tank. Let me use an old illustration. Some of you might be too young or maybe unfamiliar with this tech history, but I will keep this short and simple. People are a lot like computer processors we had in the 1990s. We had the Pentium 1s with clock speeds between 60 and 300 megahertz. Pentium 2s were good from 233 to 450 megahertz. Pentium 3s were between 450 and 1.4 gigahertz. And lastly, the P4s were good for 1.3 to 3.8 gigahertz. Then we ran into a ceiling where we could not go any faster. In this illustration, let's roughly divide IQ into these four processors where you have your slow people being Pentium 1s and your smarter people being Pentium 4s. Now I will address intelligence in another video that will go over what it is and what it's not and why most people's perceptions of it are false and poorly used. We really do have a bad way of looking at intelligence that is harmful to ourselves and our society. But that will be for another video. Right now, we will use the classic understanding of intelligence just to keep this simple. Some people are smarter than others, but in the grand scale of things, we are much closer together than apart. I would rather work with a bunch of Pentium 2s than a couple of Pentium 4s. Pentium 4s might be able to stand out on certain tasks better than others, but what they fail at is they are ultimately just one processor, just one mind with one set of experiences to draw from. To take care of multitasking and working with various tasks, multi-core processors that are slower individually work better together than any single core processor. Taking a team of 6 people and organizing a system to structure our brain power will yield much better results than 2 smart people alone. CPU manufacturers know this, and that is why they came up with the multi-core processors. You know them as the i3, i5, i7, and i9. This is where the think tank can begin. When we combine different processors together, we create a more powerful one. The 4 levels of multi-core can apply to how powerful each individual processor is within it. i9s are vastly more powerful than their i3 siblings, and yet i3s will outperform Pentium 4s any day. At the core of any multi-core processor is its systems and how each processor talks to each other. I won't go any further into this analogy and dive straight into how some of the think tank systems can work, much like how any modern day processor works. Most important, you need the right people. People that share a high level of intellectual and emotional intimacy with each other is ideal. Check out my intimacy videos to see why this is important. But the takeaway right now is the group needs to be socially close to one another. The stronger the group's rapport, the easier it will be to work on with one another. Ideas are the product of the brainstorm within a group. There is no hierarchy to brainstorming. You might have some better note takers and those better at speaking in front of people, but try to keep the brainstorming as impersonal as you can. There's no good or bad ideas. They're just ideas. Sometimes two bad ideas could be the parents of a great idea. So don't let anxiety of sharing a bad idea prevent the process of achieving the results. And in order to minimize social anxiety, there has to be equality in the brainstorm. There's no boss but equals at a round table. Rely on a process or a system to make sure the brainstorm is on track. You also need a regular place to meet to brainstorm. A place where you can leave your stuff. A place to work. This could mean different things for different purposes, and if you're just starting out, you might have to make do with the resources you have. But the bigger the goals, the more time and consistency you will need in a place to meet. This is easy if it's a place of work. If you're trying to organize in a coffee shop, do your best, but know that you're not going to achieve the potential of a think tank by having random odd meetings scattered throughout different locations with different people. Think of setting up your think tank as the first problem the think tank needs to solve. Because if you can't, you won't have a think tank. Once you have the space and you can meet regularly, there are many tools and resources you can use to enhance the abilities of your think tank. There is too many to cover in this video, and each situation will have its own needs that you will need to figure out. But do actively seek out methods and tools to better this process. One such idea that would be applicable to any think tank is continuous education. Create your own book club and always be reading on subjects that would enhance the group's abilities. Maybe each person contributes their top 5 reads. Put them into a hat, draw them out randomly as to not have any bias on what gets read. Maybe you divide and conquer by allocating expertise to individual subjects to each member of the think tank. Maybe you do a combination of the both. Regardless on the tools, you're all going to need to be looking at the same information together. What I would propose is having a brainstorming room. On one wall, you'll have current active planning, while on the other, have a visual plan that incorporates different ongoing information. And having one area solely dedicated to putting questions down for the group to answer. I will go into more detail into brainstorming rooms in another video, but for now, the takeaway is to have a dedicated space where we can put information up for everyone to see. Think of it like looking like a crime scene TV show. How they illustrate how these detectives assemble all the clues onto a storyboard and connect them with red tape to uncover new leads or conclusions that would have otherwise been missed. This room is also great at getting new eyes caught up. Maybe you have a new team member, or maybe you need a consultant to get their feedback on. They can skim through what catches their attention, and they can ask questions they need to get the rundown on what's going on. This process can also quickly have them contribute new information to the boards and add new questions that might need answers. So to recap, start thinking about group thinking as a necessary part of coming up with new ideas. They can improve your working conditions and solve problems that would largely go unsolved. Don't think you need to fill the room with just the smartest people you know. Just get minds working on a problem in a setting where everyone feels comfortable contributing to the cause. Have systems to guide this process to make it more efficient and to minimize any one person from taking over the whole process. It's not a place for egos, but a place for ideas to be born. Take those ideas and make your world a better place.